Ixth, the holy planet with a prophecy. Okay, come on. This is just another excuse to play with more TI again. The prophecy has been foretold that Shelfside will make a video on this TI4 expansion, Prophecy of Kings. But man, there's just so much content with this and that all combined, and we only got one playthrough, so here's a quick review for now. Prophecy of Kings, or POK, is the latest and currently only expansion for TI4, which is this giant half-day space opera where you're all playing as alien civilizations trying to become the emperor of the universe. Really epic, to say the least. And we got a review for that base game in the upper right hand corner that explains it all if you're down to clown there. This expansion here just adds a little bit of essentially everything to that game, and a couple of small mechanics. There's no big mechanical changes though, so we can skip any instructions and hop right into this so-called quick review that is still a pretty long vid. Now for the pros, the components of Prophecy of Kings just impresses right off the bat. First of all, it comes with another lore compendium, giving you some more awesome backstory, has all this cool art that really gets you immersed in the ancient mythos that is going on in POK. Basically, the Krios dug a little too long and deep, like picking a nose, and ended up waking the Mahakt, the OG emperors. And now that they're here, there's a bunch of other factions rising up, and the balance of power is wrecked. Basically another excuse to bring TI to the table. This other booklet here is the rulebook, and it's pretty short. When you actually read through it, the additional rules are literally only 2 pages, so it's really easy to get going. The thing that does take a while to get going is going through the sheer quantity of components. You just take everything out of this black plastic insert, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is a lot more TI. So yeah, it'll take you some time to sort through everything because there's so many more little cards that I'm just gonna start reading them off, okay? There's 40 planets, 74 explorations, 10 relics, 20 actions, 13 agendas, 40 objectives, and there's more. I'm just gonna put them all on screen. But in total, you have 323 new small cards that are this size. Then there's a bunch of new tiles provided that combine with the base games to give you this new 6-player map. And yeah, there's just so much stuff here that it's really theory crafting heaven for us TI4 veterans. Right, so the fanfare probably hits one of the highest notes with the 7 new alien races. So your group of 6 can all just play something brand spanking new. These are actually quite distinct in their asymmetry. Like if you felt that TI4 wasn't asymmetric enough for you, these might start filling in that void. Daniel played the Cabal, who are these space Godzilla dragon looking things. And yeah, as you might imagine, they just want to rampage and start fighting like crazy. They just capture opponent units when they win a fight, and then just produce a copy of that for free when they build. So yeah, just keep fighting and keep building units. Or how about how their space docks are literally the space phenomenon called gravity rifts, which possibly destroy ships moving out of them. Of course, for the space dragons, they could just move through their own rifts without getting destroyed. But wait, there's more. Gravity rifts have one more special ability, is that when you move out of them, they give you a +1 to your movement. So these space dragons now can effectively slingshot themselves across the board. It's like, Mechatol Rex needs to get attacked? Well, +1 movement, boing, 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 attack. No problemo. As we look at these two homies riding each other, it's clear that the new factions all feel so distinct and alive. There's the Argent Flightbirds who always vote first with politics and get a fat bonus when doing so, to the Titans who specialize in planetary defense, and then, whoa, what the heck are these Empyrean dudes who are just kind of humanoid? And these guys can let people move through their own ships. To wrap up these 7, I actually got to play as the OG rulers of the universe, the Gene Sorcerers, and they can actually take their opponent's command tokens to increase their fleet size after winning battle. And then they can use that faction's commander abilities. Commanders? Yeah, there are now leaders in this game, which every single faction, not just the new ones, gets. You get an agent, a commander, and a hero that all go on this new handy-do playmat. The commanders are like a once per round thing, and the heroes are a once per game thing, which means some bonkers faction specialties will come up. Like, if we go back to the Gene Sorcerers, you can literally say, kneel, and force two fleets to fight each other to the death. The cool part about leaders is that they really cement the asymmetry of each faction, as well as give you something cool to work towards, as you have to slowly unlock your commander and hero. But most importantly, it's just more crucial decisions. Like dropping a once per game is no small feat. And when you got something big that relates to your faction specifically, it feels all the more thematic and satisfying. The factions continue to get rounded out by these cool new minis called mech units. These are not only stronger ground troops for everyone to use, but they have unique special abilities per faction. And that's the last card in this new player board. The fact that different units exist with sustained damage gives a lot more nuance to fighting, and especially preparing for planetary invasions, instead of just tunneling in on spamming a standard infantry like before. But back to the abilities, some of these are straight insane. There's everything from stopping combat with the Gene Sorcerers, stopping action cards from others with the Empyrean, or the most fun, the sustaining damage for your ships. Yeah, you heard that right. The Nomad mechs can sustain damage for what they're flying in. Not sure how that works thematically, but extremely strong during gameplay. So asymmetry, asymmetry, asymmetry is just really going up there with this expansion. When you throw in these 4 new cards for every faction, it's like every faction has 4 new abilities that weren't there before. I've been sticking with the expansion factions as examples so far, but you gotta remember, every single faction has their own leaders and mechs now. So in total, you got 24 factions that all have leaders and mechs now, which is, that's a lot. Like for example, these Arbrecht space plants, who before we thought weren't that good, can definitely punch harder now. Their 3 leaders all let them start getting more units. Every single round, their agent just lets them upgrade a ship. So how about just continually upgrading your cruisers to dreadnoughts? And then their mech, well, he can produce as well, and he has a planetary shield. Oh, and then you can just replace your ground units with a mech when it's time to produce, so that's crazy. Like, we're not gonna go too far into this, but there are 8 new techs for every single color. A tech that might give you an example of the power creep going on here is Sling Relay, that lets you just tap it to build a ship. So you can tap it, build a ship without spending a command token, and then later on, you can move that ship around. Or you got the AI learning, which lets you skip a prerequisite in any color for later techs. These techs just give you more flexibility on how you want to play, and hey, look at that. There's even something that helps with voting. Now onto the map, which has an exploration mechanic that is just like Distant Suns from our old guy, TI3 right here. So for those who wanted the 4X element from TI3 that you don't quite get in TI4 because there's no explore element, well, now it's here. Every time you conquer a new neutral planet, you draw a card corresponding to its color. These can give anywhere between immediate abilities, making the planet stronger through a card attachment, or even the magical relic fragments. Yep, smash these holy fragments together of the same color, and you get a random relic, which have strong abilities like giving VP to whoever holds it, or something like expending it to grab any 3 action cards from the discard pile. On the surface, it's just like, isn't this just adding more RNG and fiddliness to the game? And in the short term, yeah, you are literally top decking more cards off more decks. But in the long term, the negotiation possibilities really start to explode. These relic fragments are constantly in trade discussions to get someone that completion at 3. And with there being more interest in those attachment planets to fight over, conflict increases. So when you land on a system with 3 planets, that's the wonder of possibility on what you can really find, and then you gotta adapt to that. Another thing to fight over are these legendary planets, as if planets couldn't get crazy enough with the exploration already. These reddish looking planets have actual abilities where when you conquer the planet, sure, you get the planet card, and then you also get a special ability that you can tap to do something. Just like with exploration, these legendary planets are gonna stir up the conflict pot of TI even more, especially when you consider that there's some relics that are influenced by them. Okay, like here's a funky example. You see this? It's called Malice, legendary planet. And once you conquer it, you can flip it over and now it's a wormhole that's connected to every other wormhole. And then when you own this, you can exhaust its special card to get 2 trade goods. We've been talking a lot about increasing the conflict, and this again comes in with the objectives. You're smacking in 40 new objectives, including secret ones. And without going too into depth about comparisons to base game, they just feel better. They generally encourage you to do something special outside of your home area, whereas in base TI4, you could sometimes get away with just chilling in your home base and spending trade goods to get points. Now, with factions being stronger, the game still has a healthy pacing if you ask for things like spawning more PDS on the board or getting control of legendary planets, which they can now play around with. This is more of the case when it comes to the tier 2s, where you can't rely on technology VP as much, where there's more aggressive objectives overall. As a whole though, with more objectives, there is just less redundancy and it's harder to predict what you can go for. I mean, actually, this is just one of the many reasons, like power creep, that makes this previous S tier faction more playable in POK. Man, just good job FFG for all this balance you've done. As we get to the end of these pros, let's go to politics. TI4's heart has always been the copious amounts of table discussion after you fiddle around with all the awesome armies and abilities. And I'll say this again, like I've been saying throughout this review, POK ratchets that discussion up. You have more meat for discussions in general, whether it be relics, leveraging legendary planets, and as we mentioned with the VP, you just can't cheese it as hard, so you gotta be a little more creative. And everyone's just stronger anyways, so you can fight easier. Or, how about leveraging your strong once per game abilities over your so-called enemies' heads? Actually, a really good instance where POK just nails the politics with its complexity are the new Alliance notes. These are cards that let you share other people's commander abilities. You know, like the ones that you have to unlock and do something good. This makes it so that it's very fun to identify commander synergies with your factions. Or just give your commander ability to a losing player so they can help you out later, especially if they're so behind they haven't unlocked their commander yet. Okay, let's dig up an example. An Arborect Nomad Alliance, where if you make it happen, the ability synergies let you always pop out a flagship when you get attacked as the Arborect. Like, jeez, sheesh. Last pro, what about the world building that's going on? FFG did an amazing job of yet again cementing what it means to be in TI. When we put everything together, the stories that come out of this game just feel more momentous than before. You have leaders giving flavor to each faction, and not just crazy abilities, but sometimes with flavor text. There's more art on everything with these leaders, which can be the faces of your armies. The exploration part of grabbing relics or conquering legendary planets just adds more mythos to your playthroughs. There's just more space epicness to get you excited about TI, with another lore compendium, more flavor text in the rulebook, and it's gonna make you have some more fun thinking on how these enhanced 24 factions duke it out. Anything bad? Well, not really, so these are just nitpicks. We just want to add that with all the added stuff, this game is going to be quite a bit bigger than base TI4. You got everyone's leaders, you got the special planets, you got all the exploration cards, and all that adding up does eat up that space. But this is all gonna happen when you add an expansion this big to a game that is already massive. One instance that is just the epitome of POK's increased scope is for the Nomads, whose asymmetry gives them 3 agents instead of just 1. But then they don't fit on the leaderboard. You gotta make sure that your board state doesn't get confused in the jumble of exhaustive leaders, mechs, new techs, alliance cards, relic fragments, there's even planet attachments. Yeah, there's a lot of tiny cards now. Board states are just going to be more physically imposing than they were before, so we'd be faulty to move on without at least mentioning that. The second nitpick, which again is a small one, is that this faction right here, the Titans, feel definitely a little bit stronger than the rest. Them being in a game doesn't break it, but they have a lot of very easy ways to just spawn PDS. And their PDS have combat as well. And hey, if you don't want to put down a PDS, well, you can just put down a mech and an infantry instead, which is some really good flexibility. Oh, and then their agent can just cancel a hit against one of their units once per turn. That's good. When everything is combined here, it just seems to work a little too well. But hey, this is TI4, and the game is so politics heavy anyways, so this is pretty moot. You can just give this faction to a newcomer, which may have been intentional after all. The last nitpick is that some of the coloring just doesn't quite work for the pink/magenta cards. The minis are fine, those space hippies that are super easy to identify. But the backs of the technology cards look so similar to the red in dark light, it's actually shocking. Do you see how similar these are? Like gosh, this was a pain to sort through, but hey, once you have it organized, just don't mix it up again. Now it's time for a tentative score, because we've only played this once, but we don't know when's the next time we're going to be able to play this, and we want to get a review out for you guys. So considering the MSRP of $100, and I've only played it once, TI4 Prophecy of Kings is going to be a 10 out of 10! It's a masterpiece. POK has opened up a new wormhole of TI4 craziness, and is definitely one of the most bold, well-made expansions in terms of board games we've ever seen. Get more of literally everything, including modifying all the old factions, and dang, I'm getting chills just thinking about that and looking at these 24 in total. The amount of pure life that is injected to TI4 from all the new cards cannot be understated. Classic factions have access to new tech, leaders, there's more tiles for the map, there's more nuanced ground combat, and Distant Suns has now been integrated in. This is just insane. In our game, we had the Ghost of Krios, who are especially revamped with more wormhole shenanigans. Their once per game essentially translated to they could move Mechatol Rex with all the pieces on it to the side of the board. As in, yeah, literally one space away from someone's home for the rest of the game. That is how you completely change a game of TI and spin all the negotiation on its head.
So scary.
Dude, what the Kratos is insane.
I need some.
Like, you could even argue that this game is even more playable at below 6 players now, because there's just more mechanics to play around with. At the 5-player count, there's something introduced called hyperlanes, which let you move across the map even more quickly, so that sounds like more conflict. And this is where we remember that you can play this game with up to 8 people now with the expansion. Like, Jesus, 8-player TI4. I don't know if we'll ever get to try that. Still, the option to do this, and even just use these new colors, is really neat. But with all of its ginormous size, we have to say that even though it does make TI4 a true 4X game, even though it does balance the factions really well, it can make TI4 just too big for some people. Like, you have to keep in mind that you have to play with all the modules to keep the balance. So it's not like you can pick and choose what you want. The biggest chunk here is the leaders and mechs, of which you want to keep tabs on for all your enemies. And that's at least 4 big things for each other faction. There's a significantly raised skill ceiling here, especially for negotiation, which has always been TI's strongest suit. And that means that turns and discussions take longer, and I wouldn't be surprised if games of POK on the regular take 1 to 2 more hours than base. If you just can't get enough of your complexity, supreme negotiation, and just sweeping epicness of games, just buy this expansion. You probably just bought this box the moment it came out anyways. You might be the type of person who relishes in the epic, grandiose nature of TI3, and you want TI4 to be longer. You want TI4 to go super hard when you do schedule for it, and then POK will be mandatory for you. If you want to sit out on POK, that's totally fine. Just enjoy the base game. It is already fantastic. It's already a 10 out of 10 game. If you really want to jump in that heavier direction, then with these combined, It's a 10 out of 10, just in that heavier, more crazy way. My personal score with playing with Pock is gonna be a 9 out of 10. I have an excellent time with it. Whoa. Now some may be taken aback because I previously rated base game TI4 a 10 out of 10. So what the heck happened in my one single playthrough that I'm basing this score on? So first and foremost, the sheer size of POK just scared me. Like, I'm all for big games, but I was pretty darn intimidated here. When we finally got around to playing, it was like, whoa, the power creep is really real. And I actually kind of like how much faster everything ramps up. Planets with abilities feel like a dream come true, new objectives are freaking amazing, and mechs are mad fun to play around with. I'm just space geeking out to the extreme. Like, the morning after we played, I was just thinking for hours and hours about everything that went wrong. Oh gosh, I should remember to use my other racial ability. Should have gone to Mechatol Rex earlier. Should have asked Daniel for help on the earlier round. Oh, and this is all just with the more ratcheted up complexity from POK. So all this, the morning after stuff, is even more extreme. It's going to be very hard to go back to base TI4 after tasting some POC. But there is some part of me that kind of wishes I never played it. Or maybe if it didn't exist, and I could just stick with base TI4. Let's back up a bit. You know why I initially bought TI4 after owning TI3 for many years? Well, it being prettier was a big factor, but actually, the streamlined nature was a huge hook. I've played even 5-hour sessions of TI4, which makes it really easy to schedule around. Like, bam, college roommate shows up, teach him the game, we get going, play the game. Pretty darn easy. Now comes in POK, where you start drifting away from that streamlined nature. And for me, after one playthrough, all the constant new complexity was the straw that started to make me a little apprehensive about this new mutated version. For all the space geeking that sounds brilliant in theory, when all thrown into an actual game, I'm feeling more distance from that clean, beautifully streamlined nature of base TI4. I've never needed more complexity, more replayability, or more faction balance with TI4. I really liked it as is, and so tasting POK just feels like some expensive caviar that has ruined my taste buds. I just can't experience this blinged out version of TI4 as much because it's longer and also less teachable. And when I do actually play it, I fear that it's gonna be a little too rich for my bloodstream. Thanks for watching the video, guys. I know we've only played this once, but so many people have been asking for a POK review, and I don't know if we'll ever be able to fully cover this, so I wanted to get something out for you guys. Also, Daniel and I are planning on dropping top 10s later this year, so we'll cover this a little more in depth in terms of our personal score. As always, thanks to our patrons for making videos like this possible. We got John S, Manuel G, Brian C, Clifford H, Aaron W, Max B, Bora, Jeremy MC, Charlie P, Quinton S, Sam S, Travis R, Alvin Y, Von K, Ryan D, Jeff L, Brett M, Maggie, Peter Z, Spinner 71, Brian J, Brad G, Tiamo, Period, Mark A, James M, Evan B, Charles B Jr., Josh J, Bassbar, Rado, Sophie, Reiner Z, Colin Allen, and Hudson T, and Pearson T. Also, shout out to Spinner 71 for his POK expertise. We got 3 Mad Lads of Cardboard, we got ZL, Jeff L, and oh, can I say that? Put the text there. And we got 1 Mad Lady of Cardboard, we got Amy. So we did it, guys. POK has been covered on this channel. We'll get back to it as I was saying. If you want to check out this game, we got a purchase link in the description below. Remember to sub and like if you enjoy this content. See you guys later. Bye-bye.